Donald Trump is about to be sworn in as president, and so Rachel Maddow has Chuck Schumer on the show, and they ask him a whole bunch of stuff. It's like he's going to be the Senate Minority Leader now, the highest ranking Democrat in the Senate. They ask him about what he's going to do going forward. They're talking a bit about how, you can't do policy by tweet, and Donald Trump's going to have to blah, blah, blah. If you want to go watch it, it's up on YouTube. But at one point then, something really interesting happens. Like really, really fucking interesting. Rachel Maddow, and this is a live show. So Rachel Maddow presents Chuck Schumer with something that Trump had just tweeted. Now, you can tell by the way this is set up, and actually, if you go back and look at the time of the tweet, it happened after the show had already started live. So Chuck Schumer has not seen this. He hasn't thought about what he's going to say. It's not like all these other generic questions that they throw at a guy like Chuck Schumer where you've got a scripted answer. This is a real moment where Chuck Schumer did something that he almost never does. And he blurted out the truth. And that's what's really interesting about this. So we're going to go to our first clip here, which is Chuck Schumer on the Rachel Maddow Show, January 2017.
Let me ask you, I don't know if you have seen this. I don't want to blindside you with this. This is the latest statement, latest tweet, as you were just saying, the president-elect's latest unsolicited pronouncement on the intelligence community. This was his tweet just a little while ago tonight. You see the scare quotes there. The intelligence briefing on so-called Russian hacking was delayed until Friday. Perhaps more time needed to build a case. Very strange. We're actually told, intelligence sources tell NBC News since this tweet has been posted, that actually this intelligence briefing for the president-elect was always planned for Friday. It hasn't been delayed. But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do this.
What do you think the intelligence community would do if they were motivated?
I don't know, but from what I am told, they are very upset with how he has treated them and talked about them. And we need the intelligence community. We don't know what's going on. Look at the Russian hacking. Without the intelligence community, we wouldn't have discovered it.
Do you think he has an agenda to try?
I mean, there's just so much juice on that bone. Right. Yeah. Without the intelligence community, we wouldn't even known about this Russian hacking thing that turned out to be not true.
But of course, that's like the idea that this is what you have to say, well, but we need them because we wouldn't have known about some Facebook ads that have been,
because otherwise the elected official might actually be able to do his job.
Right. This is the best you've got to why we need the intelligence community. But look, what's far crazier than that is that Chuck Schumer just says, oh, you want to take on the intelligence community? You want to mess with the CIA, motherfucker? They will fuck you up. I mean, that's not an exact quote, but it's a lot better than a Adam Schiff, in essence, what he said here quote. That's what he's saying. You take on the CIA will fuck you up. You don't do that. And then he says, I've been told. This is the most powerful Democrat in the Senate. I've been told. I've heard that the intelligence community is very upset by the way Donald Trump's been talking about them. It's like, well, I'm sorry. Did he hurt their feelings? This is, the CIA serves the president, supposedly. That's supposed to be the way this bullshit system works.
Not when they're upset, they
don't.
But
they will just straight up tell you, this is not somebody I'm reading between the lines. I've seen the documents, but you haven't seen the documents. This is what's going out on MSNBC's #1 show, their biggest show, the Rachel Maddow show, Rachel Maddow's Hour. What's going out is you're not allowed to say unkind things about our spies, or they will fuck you up. Now, it's interesting that already by this point, Donald Trump seems to have smelled that the deep state was out to get him. He already was like, there's some fucking shady shit going on here, and he's telling him, man, you play ball with these people. Imagine that. One of the most powerful senators in the world. One of the most powerful people in the world, one of the most powerful people in the Senate, is just saying publicly, you do not say anything about the CIA. You mind your P's and Q's when they come up, because they're more powerful than all of us. They've got 6 ways till Sunday to screw you over. So you watch out what you ever say about them. That is now another thing to pay attention to here is that Rachel Maddow is this supposed progressive. I mean, this is somebody who you would think if you had one of the most powerful senators in front of you saying nobody can criticize the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, or they will ruin you, that might warrant like a follow-up question. Let's just say you were pretending to be a journalist and you had the Senate Minority Leader say that to you. Wouldn't that Jesus Christ, me and Rob, we're just a couple idiot comedians, but you would know well enough, I would know well enough, just in terms of doing your job, good television, good news. If you had a senator say something like that to you, you'd be like, wait, what? You're telling me you can't even criticize these people? And how exactly are they going to screw you over? So he says, well, we need the intelligence community. I mean, we wouldn't have even known about Russian hacking. Where would we all be? What would you think? Honestly, people who listen to this show, I want you to take an honest look at your life, your family, your friends, your job. What would it be like if you didn't know about the Russian hacking?
I don't like the
Imagine we didn't have that. And then what? You would just get to democratically elect your president and then he would serve his term? Can you imagine that? This sounds like a nightmare.
So this is looking for.
This is what he's saying. Now let's keep playing because they take it one step further.
Try to dismantle parts of the intelligence community. I mean, this form of taunting hostility.
Whether you're a super liberal Democrat or a very conservative Republican, you should be against dismantling the intelligence community.
Senator Charles Schumer of New York.
Okay. So there. Oh, no matter who you are, no matter what your politics are, you have to be for the CIA. Chuck Schumer of New York. All right, everybody, that's the follow-up question to that. We all have to blindly be for the CIA. Well, I am neither a super liberal Democrat nor a super conservative Republican, and I'm kind of for dismantling the CIA. And you know what? I think there's actually a decent amount of people out there who would probably agree with that. But that's unbelievable. I mean, talk about Tom Woods, where he says there's the 3x5 index card of allowable opinion. That's what Chuck Schumer just laid out for you. Listen, whether you're way over on this side or way over on this side, we all agree the CIA can't be questioned. That's where we're saying. But so that is Exhibit A. By the way, I'm not, because I don't have time to on one podcast, I'm not prosecuting the entire case of why the deep state is at war with Donald Trump. I just picked these at random today. But there you have Chuck Schumer, the top Democrat in the Senate, telling you that if you criticize the intelligence community, if you do what Trump just did, they have 6 ways till Sunday. Isn't that what he said? 6 ways till Sunday to get back at you. So that's just the threat right there. But hey, I mean, that's just a senator speculating.
Even the CIA takes off one day for the Lord.
Yeah. They'll
fuck you over for 6 days, but on the 7th day they'll rest.
Oh, you're lucky you dissed me on a Sunday. You better enjoy Sunday night football tonight, because Monday morning, 8 a.m. sharp. Traffic's bad in D.C., 8:15, but still, you're getting it. Okay, but that's just, hey, that's just one, very powerful senator's opinion. Who knows what the deep state is actually doing to fuck over Donald Trump? All right, guys, let's take a quick second and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Wix.com. That is the better way to build websites for your clients. With Wix, you can harness the latest web technology and innovative design tools to deliver professional results. Start with a blank page and design the layout you want. Grow their business with a custom online store, out-of-the-box booking system, and live chat. With Wix, you can publish in a click, and it makes edits super fast. Your clients will enjoy enterprise-grade security and automatic web hosting. Use industry-leading SEO and powerful marketing tools to drive traffic to their site. Get started on your next client's website today. Go to Wix.com/POTP. That's Wix.com/POTP. Wix. Scale your web business. So now let's go to 60 Minutes with Andrew McCabe, who is talking about same year, 2017, okay, when he became the acting director of the FBI. And he's talking about his conversations with Rod Rosenstein, who was, I believe, the number 2 at the Justice Department. And let's listen to him from 60 Minutes.
But McCabe says Rosenstein raised another idea. The 25th Amendment to the Constitution allows the vice president and a majority of the cabinet to remove the president.
A discussion of the 25th Amendment was simply Rod raised the issue and discussed it with me in the context of thinking about how many other cabinet officials might support such an effort. I didn't have much to contribute, to be perfectly honest, in that conversation, so I listened to what he had to say. But to be fair, it was an unbelievably stressful time. I can't even describe for you how many things must have been coursing through the Deputy Attorney General's mind at that point. So it was really something that he kind of threw out in a very frenzied, chaotic conversation about where we were and what we needed to do next.
What seemed to be coursing through the mind of the Deputy Attorney General was getting rid of the President of the United States.
Well,
one way or another.
I can't confirm that, but what I can say is the Deputy Attorney General was definitely very concerned about the President, about his capacity, and about his intent at that point in time.
How did he bring up the idea of the 25th Amendment to you?
Honestly, I don't remember. It was just another kind of topic that he jumped to in the midst of...
All right, let's pause it right there. So it is funny how the interviewer there, I'm blanking on his name, but the 60 Minutes guy just go, sounds like what anybody listening to what you just said would probably think. Sounds like the FBI was talking about getting rid of the president any way they could. And then he goes, well, how did he bring this up to you? And he goes, it was just another thing. Now that is, I'm sorry, that is a pretty incredible response to the conversation you're talking about. Like, if you were to ask me about, say, Rob, right, like some conversation that we had last year, and I go, oh yeah, Rob mentioned at one point, something about he's going to go get a sandwich, and you were like, how did it come up? And I'd be like, I don't know exactly. Rob talks about sandwiches all day long, every day. Like I don't know exactly what. But if I go, Rob told me he was gonna murder a man last year, and you go, how did it come up? And I go, well, it's just another conversation. It's like, wow, you're telling me that the two of the highest level people at the Justice Department were discussing removing the then newly elected president of the United States, and you're like, it was just a frenzied conversation, one of a lot of things. It's like, wow, you must have had a lot of conversations about removing the president, that this was just one of many instances, a frenzied conversation. It was a crazy environment. You got to remember, it was crazy. We had a new FBI director. I mean, yeah, we were talking about removing the president. It's like, okay, well, doesn't that fit interestingly with Chuck Schumer's comment?
Didn't also Rod Rosenstein, wasn't he the one that talked Jeff Sessions into recusing himself from the Russia collusion investigations?
It might be. Hey, bro, would you grab me the fucking jewel charger that's out there? A second. I don't remember if it was Rosenstein who convinced Sessions to recuse. You might be right about that.
But either way, it looks like they were having a meeting on how do we get this guy out of office, and that's not really your job. I think the voters are supposed to decide on who gets the office. And
at least that's what I've been told.
But
at least in your third grade, fifth grade, eighth grade civics class, they probably wouldn't tell you. If the way that American government works, thank you, brother.
But it's different when the CIA gets upset. They're emotional, and we got to make sure that they're okay.
Well, if you were like, but in like an eighth grade civics class, if you were like, well, how do we elect presidents? They'd be like, oh, okay, well, there's like every state holds, elections, and then the electoral college votes decide who ultimately will be the president of the United States, and that's how it works. Congress can impeach the president if he's committed high crimes and misdemeanors, and then every 4 years we have a presidential election. But if you hurt the feelings of our spies, they can also just overthrow you. I don't ever remember that last part being taught, but maybe I'll be honest, I was never a very good student, so maybe that is part of the game also. But more or less, that's to Tucker Carlson's point, that's not really a conspiracy in the sense that it's not secret. I guess you could say at the time it was a conspiracy, but they're just telling you. They're like, hey. Now, Andrew McCabe also said in that interview later where they go, well, what evidence did you have against the president? They said basically everything that was out in the open. So they're not operating on any like, oh, we had this secret evidence.
Guessing how many people would support it is the definition of a coup. Like, do we have enough people here that we can overthrow the guy in power? Yeah, that's called a coup, I think. Isn't that? Yeah,
that would
cooing.
be a coup d'etat.
That's getting your coup on.
Yeah. I hate to bring in French words into this conversation, but you're cooing pretty hard right there. You're cooing up a storm. So this is, just a couple more pieces. And of course, if you people who listen to the show, I know who have listened for the last year, we've played that last clip we played before on the show, but I just think it's good to go back and refresh and kind of, like I said a couple podcasts ago, to frame the issue, and to see exactly what's going on here.
Pretty soon we get post-Russia collusion, and then we get that CNN apology for a lying test for 2 years. That's coming up soon.
Well, we don't actually have that clip ready, but it is coming up soon. Okay. Every day I watch CNN and I'm still waiting, and I'm sure they're going to.
They wasted our time for 2 years.
Right, but I just think they want to deliver such a good apology that they're really working on it.
All right,
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's going to be like really well written.
Because they really wasted a lot of our time and energy. That's right. So they got to get that apology right.
There's no way CNN would do that and then not give us an apology.
That makes sense.
All right. The next character that I wanted to introduce into this would be John Brennan, who, of course, was the CIA director under Barack Obama. So this is the CIA director at the beginning of all of this stuff going down, when Donald Trump is the candidate, when he's, wins the nomination, and when he gets elected. This is the director of the CIA. So here is John Brennan. Now, this is just going, just last year, John Brennan talking to Lawrence O'Donnell just a week before the Mueller investigation wrapped up.
Here's John March, when he is going to be delivering what I think are going to be his indictments, the final indictments, as well as the report that he gives to the Attorney General.
What makes you believe that he has more indictments?
Because he hasn't addressed the issues related to criminal conspiracy, as well as any individuals.
Criminal conspiracy involving the Russian influence?
Russians, yes, yeah. I think it was very, in terms of American person, U.S. persons.
That's an area you know something about. That investigation was developing while you were still on the job.
Well, it was, in terms of looking at what was going on with the Russians and whether or not U.S. persons were actively collaborating, colluding, cooperating, and involved in a conspiracy with them or not. But also if there's going to be any member of the Trump family.
Did you see enough at that stage to believe that there would now that would result in indictments once investigated?
I thought at the time that there was going to be individuals who were going to have issues with the Department of Justice. Yes, and I think we've already seen a number of individuals who have been indicted, either have pled guilty or have been convicted now. So again, I don't have any inside knowledge. I'm not talking with anybody in special counsels.
Yes, you do. You have the inside knowledge,
but not about the status of the investigation right now. Yeah. But I do think also if anybody from the Trump family, an extended family, is going to be indicted, it would be in the final act of Mueller's investigation, because Bob Mueller and I think his team knows that if he were to do something, indicting a Trump family member, or if he were to go forward with indictment on criminal conspiracy involving U.S. persons, that would basically be the death knell of the special counsel's office, because I don't believe that Donald Trump would allow Bob Mueller to continue in the aftermath of those types of actions.
John Brennan, thank you very much. You have to listen to every word in the John Brennan answer. Thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
You really do. Yeah, you really do, Lawrence O'Donnell. And by the way, just one thing to note before we even break down what the former CIA director just said right there, just the attitude of Lawrence O'Donnell, who's interviewing the former CIA director. This is your news media. It's like, thank you so much. Oh, you know everything, man. You really got to listen to this guy. He's just so great. That is how the media sees their role of covering the CIA. Now, what did John Brennan say there? Well, he's kind of a spook about it. I mean, he manages to kind of cover his ass, but are there going to be people indicted, relating to conspiracy with Russia? And he goes, well, I think there will be U.S. persons who have some issues with the Justice Department. Yes. And we've already seen a lot of U.S. persons who've had issues with the Justice Department. Right. But nothing to do with conspiracy with Russia. It's going to be Donald Trump's family is going to get arrested. Donald Trump will shut down the investigation before they can get the indictments off. So he's got to get the indictments at the last minute. And then what did we get? Nothing. Now, remember, this is the same John Brennan who came out a year before this and said that Donald Trump's guilty of treason. Now, of course, the Mueller investigation found that Donald Trump's guilty of nothing and not even indicted for anything. But the CIA director had already told you he's guilty of treason. The punishment for treason, do you remember what the punishment for treason is? It's, I think it's probation. It might be death. That's the punishment for treason. Oh, yes, death. They kill you. The CIA director basically came out and said, Donald Trump's going to get killed by the state, after a legal process and all that. But it's worth noting. It's worth trying to put all of these little pieces of information together to understand what's actually going on here. Now, there's another person that I want to introduce into this
Did you say anything weird about the fact that they were already onto this while he was still working with Obama?
Well, he kind of gave a vague spy answer, but he goes, yes, I saw many things that would indicate that there will be U.S. persons who will have issues with the law. It's like, oh, okay.
But that's at the beginning of the campaign even. Isn't that what he's referring to? Because that's when Obama
was electing him. It was toward the end of the campaign, so right. 2016 into very early 2017.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So,
but just in terms of timeline, that sounds like about when the FISA court shit would have happened, where Trump was being claimed.
Yes. Oh yeah. In 2016. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which Brandon might have had some.
It wasn't until 2017 that Trump claimed they were spying on him, but the spying occurred earlier in 2016. All right, guys, let's take a quick second. Thank our sponsor for today's show, which is BetDSI. BetDSI.com, the place for online gambling. BetDSI has been around for over 20 years. They're top rated on business review sites. Super easy to use, fast playing interface. And you can bet games as they go. You get live in-game wagering options, which is a lot of fun. You walk into a bar, the game's already started, but you can throw a few bucks on it in the middle. They've got great customer service available 24/7, 365, and BetDSI has built a reputation on fast payment of winnings. I love this site. I've had a lot of fun gambling on BetDSI.com. Now, as is my tradition here, I give some picks. So here we go. Let me tell you, all right? Coming up in the UFC, middleweight title fight, Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya. This is a tough one to pick. A lot of the pros are real split between this one. I'm going to tell you, I like Israel Adesanya in this fight. I just think the way they match up, I think he's a pure striker. Whittaker's going to try to strike with him, and I think Israel is going to find a way to get this done. So go put your money on Whittaker, because I have surely just jinxed Israel Adesanya. But if you go to betdsi.com, which is where you're going to bet on this, make sure you use the promo code POTP120 so they know we sent you. When you sign up, you have some options. You can just play and cash out whenever you want to, or you can take the bonus money. If you take the bonus money, there are rollover requirements, but it's free cash. But you have to bet a certain amount before you can withdraw it. But if you use promo code POTP120, they're going to give you a 60% bonus cash on your deposit. So if you deposit $1,000, you have $1,600 to play with. Either way, go to betdsi.com, use promo code POTP120, have some fun, win some money. All right, let's get back into the show. Okay, so one other person that I want to bring into this mix here, that's an interesting guy, I just wanted to play this clip, and it kind of ties into what we were saying, but it's more just to establish who this guy is. And that's Phil Mudd, who is a CIA guy who works at CNN now. But, it's Phil Mudd. That could describe the entire CNN staff. So I'm just talking about this one guy, Phil Mudd. Now, Phil Mudd, the reason I wanted to bring him in is because he said something the other day that caught my mind. But as we're going back and we're looking at some of these things, let's not also forget that there was a scandal about a year and a half ago, when, if you remember this, Rob, where Donald Trump decided that he wanted to revoke the security clearances of a whole bunch of former deep state agents. John Brennan, the guy who was saying he's guilty of treason and his family's going to go to jail and he's going to be murdered. That was one of them. Clapper, who was the guy who famously lied to Congress about the NSA spying. Comey, the guy who he fired after trying to blackmail him. There are a bunch of these people who he was like, I don't want them knowing what's going on. I don't want them having access to these secrets. And this
got them all worked up.
Oh my God, did this get people worked up? Right? I mean, if you thought just when he was president-elect, just tweeting things about, intelligence in quotes, if Chuck Schumer was like, this is going to get you all fucked up. Well, what about when you're actually starting to fuck with some of their power? That's going to be a whole thing. It should also be kept in mind that Donald Trump did very shortly. Okay, so as I mention all the time, John Brennan, who ran the CIA when we had that little program that armed Al-Qaeda in Syria, Donald Trump ended that program very shortly after becoming president. That was another thing that I think they were not so thrilled about. But let's go to this. Here's Phil Mudd, and he was I remember this one always stuck out in my mind. It's an interesting gauge of how they were responding to Donald Trump talking about revoking people's security clearances. It also is a little insight into exactly who this guy Phil Mudd is. So let's play this next clip.
Last night's statement from the 12, then the 13, and now the 15 intelligence chiefs and deputies was followed late today by a statement from 60 other former intelligence professionals. I just want to highlight a few of those names and their accomplishments so you could get a better sense of the caliber and the sacrifice and the service of these men and women. Let's start with Greg Vogel. He's the former CIA Deputy Director for Operations. He was in charge of covert ops, and he's credited with saving the life of the Afghan President Hamid Karzai during a friendly fire strike in Afghanistan just after 9/11. Remember that. There is Letitia Long. She's the former director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. She's the first woman to head a U.S. intelligence agency. There is the highly decorated Jeremy Bash, and there is also CNN counterterrorism analyst Phil Mudd, long history in counterterrorism, who joins us now.
All right, let's pause it already. Once again, just notice, this is how the corporate press covers the deep state. So 75 deep state agents came out and criticized the president's decision to revoke security clearances. And he just goes, look, man, I mean, you got 75 people here criticizing the president. Now, I know 63 million people voted for him, but those are just like fucking, American citizens. We got 75 CIA or NSA FBI members here who are criticizing him. Now, let me go through the list of these great American heroes. This is how CNN, with a straight face, will cover the CIA. I mean, spend a half hour on Google familiarizing yourself with the history of the CIA and what these motherfuckers have done. And then imagine that the cable news network, this is how they cover them. I mean, if we had state media, like state authoritarian media, could they do a better job? It really is something. It's something to watch. Well, this one guy saved President Karzai in Afghanistan. And then he just throws in there after, from a friendly fire mission. Like, oh, okay. So what did he do? He went, hey, guys, this is us. Stop shooting at us. We're all anyway. But so yes, these are like these angels who are above criticism, and if they say it, then it better be true. But I will say, to this guy's credit, they did have a Trump supporter on with Phil Mudd. So let's play the rest of this because it gets interesting.
Commentator Paris Denard. Phil, since you are one of those who signed your name to that list, the second letter coming from former intelligence officials today, tell me why you and your colleagues went public today protesting the president's actions.
I don't understand, Jim, why we keep talking about security clearances. This is not about security clearances. My peers on that letter spent our lives. I joined in '85 fighting countries, the North Koreans, looking at other adversaries or potential adversaries, the Chinese, the Russians. These countries, one of the common characteristics they have is people who want to speak out because they have views that don't correspond with the views of government are either sidelined or, in some cases, if you look at Vladimir Putin, murdered. This is not about security clearances. This is about the president trying to intimidate people to say, you're a dog and I'll muzzle you. We spent our career saying that we're fighting for the right of 330 million Americans to speak, and the president said no. That will never happen in this country. All of us will speak until we are dragged away. I don't care what I say. I don't care what John Brennan says. I have the right to say it. I don't care whether the president likes it or not. If it's Bush, if it's Obama, if it's Trump, I have the right to say it. That's the reason we wrote that letter.
Can we pause?
Pause it. Yes. Wow, that was powerful, man.
Well, I don't exactly remember the revoking of security clearances having any tie-ins with free speech or what you aren't allowed to say. Did I miss something?
No, I mean, now that he puts it like that, it's like, wow, I don't want anyone to be muzzled like a dog or not have the freedom of speech in this country anymore. And this guy's about to be dragged away for saying something, or says, I don't care what John Brennan says or I say. We have the right to say it. Whew. All right, maybe I'm getting this thing all wrong. I mean, Donald Trump's cracking down on free speech. Let's just listen to what the other guy says in response to that, because obviously he'd have to agree with him, right? I mean, he doesn't want that either.
Ask you, longtime Trump supporter, who should the American people trust? Who should the American people listen to on this issue? 75 men and women like that who have
hold on, wait, I can answer that question real quick. None of them.
Well, also,
none of you guys. Definitely not Donald Trump, and definitely not a bunch of CIA fucking people. That's not who I trust. I don't know what to tell you.
Also,
because I mean, listen, the CIA, if you know anything about their history, they do have a long history of telling the truth. That is one thing that the CIA is always known for. Straight shooters. Straight from the hip. If something's up, they tell you. They're like, look, you know, sometimes they won't tell you the whole truth, and then you go, are you lying to me? And they go, all right, you got me. This rule number one of the CIA is you do not tell a lie. That's being a spy. First day, first lesson, always tell the truth. So you would think you can trust them, but I still err on the side of not trusting spies and also not trusting Donald Trump. How about that?
In addition to that, you know, he's saying, hey, we've been at war with Russia and China. Well, we can vote for people who don't think that we need to be at war with Russia and China.
Or can we?
Yeah. Well, he says not. He says that that's people being muzzled and thrown away like dogs. But I'm pretty sure the way the democratic process is supposed to work is that people can go, hey, we don't really need to be at war with these countries. Why don't we cooperate with them, trade, get all their cheap shit, and send all of our shitty jobs over there? We can make those decisions. We're allowed to.
You know, as somebody who's never been a big believer in the democratic process, or who's not a big believer in the democratic process, when I say that, a lot of people think that's a crazy claim to make, and when they explain how it works, it seems to be along the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and right away, the way CNN handles this, so obviously he's going, well, who should we trust? I mean, the 75, honorable men and women who I just told you about how great they were, or this lying president? And obviously, you know what the answer is, right? Like, he's not asking an honest question. He's saying, well, obviously, we should trust the CIA. That's the position of CNN. It's not my position. Oh, don't trust any of them. It's not a Trump supporter's position. I trust Donald Trump. It's support the goddamn deep state. That's who you trust.
To put a little bit more of a frame on this, you have people that no longer work at the CIA that are now on CNN every night trashing you. So they don't need security clearances. Trump also, let's look back, he was having an issue with whistleblowers. So the fact that you have someone
you don't even have to look back. He's the whole time. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just saying. So like, they don't work at the CIA anymore. They work for another institution that's doing nothing but trashing you and your job. Why would you invite them into your organization to see what? Like, of course you wouldn't do that.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep playing.
Continue to serve their country, who have served both Republican and Democratic presidents, I might add, or the president on this? Who's right?
Well, I think they are both right. I think that
the president's trying to silence them. How could one, in this case, one has to be right, because they're saying the president was wrong to remove the security clearance under threat of taking away people's voice here.
What we have seen since John Brennan's security clearance has been revoked is that nobody's voice has been silenced. Mr. Cohen came on your program, said whatever he wanted to. Others have come on. and said exactly what they want to. They continue to be contributors on cable news. They continue to tweet as they wish. Phil Mudd came on this program tonight and said he won't be silent. So the idea that somehow revoking their security clearance is going to silence them is not true. So they're still talking.
Why is the president doing it?
Hold on, let's pause it there.
Silences them from leaking.
Yeah. I got to say, this guy kind of makes a good point, because that guy who he said was silenced just spoke for a while.
On the
news. So he wasn't really that silenced. I mean, he's being broadcast to airports all around this country right now on the cable news network. So, yeah, maybe that's not the proper way to frame this question. All right, let's keep going.
Have to look at is the idea of norms and laws and privileges and rights. And these are all getting confused under this administration, with people thinking that because something was a norm means that it's law. That's not the case. A lot of these people that have these security clearances, and this is the secret in the swampy Washington, D.C., they have them and they keep them because it's profitable for them after they leave government. Because if you have a security clearance, especially high-level security clearances, your contracts and your consulting gigs pay you a lot more money because of the access that you have. I hope the president continues to do this, and I hope he adds Omarosa to the list, because if she has a clearance, she too, because of her actions, should have it revoked.
Well, I don't know if I'd put Omarosa in the same category of the 75 people who signed those letters, but Phil Mudd, I imagine...
Hold on, wait. That is a really good point. I would not put Omarosa in the same category as those people. Omarosa never armed Al-Qaeda. Far more trustworthy than John Brennan. But that was a real interesting little thing. I mean, you're not supposed to say that. Oh shit, you're not supposed to say that a whole bunch of these people who have security clearances go and get gigs in the private sector that pay them a lot more because they have access to all of this information now. And now they can fucking have a guy there. Well, maybe that's part of how CNN gets all these, breaking stories about what people in the intelligence community are saying. Ooh, interesting. Phil Mudd seems angry. Let's hear his response.
React.
Profitable, Paris. When I am requested to sit on an advisory board, let me ask you one question. How much do you think I'm paid to do that at the request of the U.S. government? Give me one answer, and you got 10 seconds. How much?
I'll ask you a question. How much are you paid for your consulting and contracting gigs?
I have no contracts with the U.S. government that pay money.
I'm not talking.
Zero.
And this is the thing. I'm not talking about
asked to offer advice to the U.S. government,
Phil,
I get paid zero.
Phil, let's be honest. I'm not talking about your role with the federal government. I'm talking about the contracts and gigs that you get from being a consultant and a contractor. The consulting firms that they form and that you all get is because you get more money when having a consultant for having the security clearance.
That
Stop acting like that doesn't happen.
I have zero consulting relationships with the U.S. government. Zero.
I'm not talking, Phil, that's a good talking point. I'm not talking about relationships with the government. I'm talking about in the private sector. When you have a security clearance and you keep it. I have zero
relationships with the private sector that involve my security clearance. Zero. I get $0 from consulting companies that deal with the U.S. government. Are we clear?
Well, I will be clear in saying that everybody in Washington, D.C. knows if you don't want to be honest about it, that's on you. But if you have a security clearance and you keep it, you get more money to have it.
We're done. Get out.
Phil,
it's not your show, so I'm staying right here. Don't be so defensive about this.
Get out.
Don't be so defensive about this. Your voice is still here. You can still do whatever you want. But the politicalization of the intelligence community under this administration, with the people coming on here every day, tweeting and talking about this administration, you all have made it about politics, not the president.
Let's take a beat here for a second. And Phil, I appreciate your patience because I know it's getting personal here. Paris, I do a point of fact here.
All right.
And Phil makes a point, which is a point of fact. When a Phil Mudd, who serves on an advisory board for counterterror threats, goes and participates in conversations at the agency about those threats, he's not getting paid for that.
And that's how I'm talking
about. When Bill
about.
McRaven is consulted on counterterror operations because he led dozens of missions.
So we can pause it there, and that's all that I wanted to get to about that video. But what an interesting little glimpse into the way this whole thing works and into that guy Phil Mudd's mind. So, first of all, he's just outraged. I mean, this is a guy who does CNN shows all the time, but you don't fucking talk about this shit. And he actually, I almost have to respect the balls in him. He kicks this guy off a show that isn't his show. Can you imagine just being on someone else's show and just kicking someone off? Because you're like, get out! Get out! You don't dare bring up something that everybody knows is true. And then what does the CNN host do? Well, he doesn't react. You think the normal reaction would be like, well, you can't kick someone off my show. I'm having both of you guys on, and this guy just said something that we all know is true. So, no. And like, hey, we're trying to have a conversation here. Stop screaming at people because you don't like what he said. He also yells at him about how he doesn't get government money, but yeah, that was never really the point that the guy was making. Anyway, just wanted to point out that was how it was covered, and that's who that guy is. When Donald Trump said he was going to revoke some security clearances. This is how the media reacts to any type of moves against the CIA, against the deep state. A little bit creepy. Okay. Let's go to the next clip that we have up here, which is, I believe, the Tucker Carlson one. Is that the next one? So this is from Tucker's show last night. And he played a couple clips. I was trying to find these clips independently, but I couldn't. So let's just play this because Tucker, as I mentioned, has been doing some really fantastic journalism on this story. So let's take a look at this.
Yesterday, former CIA Director John Brennan expressed outrage that anyone would dare impose oversight on the intelligence agencies that secretly oversee our lives.
I'm supposedly going to be interviewed by Mr. Durham as part of this non-investigation. I remember William Barr, when he was testifying in front of Congress, he said he didn't understand the predication of the counterintelligence investigation that was launched into Russia's interference in the 2016 election. I don't understand the predication of this worldwide effort to try to uncover dirt, either real or imagined, that would discredit that investigation in 2016 into Russian interference.
All right, let's pause
John
it
Brennan
there.
is a
So there is John Brennan. Now, of course,
Real or imagined.
What he's referring to is that it's come out more and more over the last few days that it looks like the Attorney General Barr has actually really been trying to investigate the origins of the Russian collusion hoax. And he's been doing this on a worldwide stage. He's not just doing this through the American government. He's going all around to different governments around the world, in Europe, in Eastern Europe particularly, and trying to get to the bottom of this. And John Brennan is like, well, you don't understand what that. You're saying you don't understand what the Russia investigation was predicated on. Well, I don't understand what this investigation's predicated on. Well, all right. Let's take a shot at that. Take a quick shot at that. Okay. So Donald Trump, the president of the United States, who was duly elected, feel however you feel about the system, feel however you feel about Donald Trump. Those things are facts. Donald Trump is the president of the United States, and he was duly elected. His administration, for the first 2 years of his administration and for the year preceding it, were under investigation for Donald Trump colluding, being involved in a conspiracy with the Russians. This turned out to be not true. Turned out there was no evidence of this. No charges were brought. It was started by opposition research that was all completely, in the FBI's words, salacious and unverified. Okay? And it was used by his political enemies to box him in from getting his agenda achieved. Okay? So that's why people have questions about the origins of that investigation. This investigation that you're talking about is because of what I just said. That you're able to spy on a president's administration, go through his entire cabinet, throw people in jail for every charge you can find going back for the last 20 years, or lying to the FBI, or any charges that came up after the investigation started, like lying to the FBI or misremembering an email or a date or a business appointment. If you can do all that, you might want to look into what allowed you to do that. Like, doesn't there have to be some bar that you have to pass before you can just do that to a politician who you don't like, to the opposition party? So that's the difference. And as you mentioned, Rob, I thought you picked up right away on what was the most interesting thing that he said in there. He said, whether real or imagined. Wait, so you're telling me if it was real, we still shouldn't investigate this? I mean, well, if John Brennan says so, oh, wait, John Brennan would be directly implicated in all of that. So he can just decide, no, I don't think so. You know, it's like if you killed somebody and then they're like, well, we're opening a murder investigation. And you're like, look, what's the point of this investigation if you're going to find some evidence, whether real or imagined, that I murdered somebody? Like, well, I don't know if we want to listen to you about this one. Because you're in kind of a tough spot to be objective. All right, let's keep playing Tucker Carlson.
He's a naked partisan, and he's a liar. He's acted in ways that would have shocked and horrified previous CI directors, and that's saying a lot. But John Brennan is not ashamed. Far from it, he's proud. And so are his many acolytes in Washington. Phil Mudd is a former CIA employee. Like so many partisans from intelligence world, he's now a contributor at CNN. Last night, Mudd sent an on-air warning to the president and his lawyer. Back off or prepare to get hurt.
I spent a lot of time in government. There are State Department officials who will testify, intel guys, DOD, Department of Defense people. All of us are sort of a brotherhood and sisterhood. Rudy Giuliani parachutes in from Mars. The people who will testify are going to look at him, including State Department officials, and say, I don't have to protect that guy. He didn't operate by the rules. He didn't do what you're supposed to do in government. I suspect he's worried about what the Congress will do. If I were him, I'd be worried about whether people in government stick a shiv in his back. He's in trouble.
All right. So let's pause it there. Can I just say, Phil Mudd seems like a lovely guy. Seems like a really, really nice guy. He's been furious since that last clip that we played a year and a half ago until this one right now. But that's their attitude. And this, by the way, if you notice from Chris Cuomo's face there, gets no type of like, wait, what did you just say? What the hell did you just say? So when you tell me that I'm like a little kooky for thinking there's this deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump, here is former CIA analyst telling you there's a deep state conspiracy against Donald Trump. He goes, all of these people in the DOD, in the CIA, in the FBI, we're a brotherhood. We protect each other. They're going to look at Giuliani and go, you're not part of the deep state. We don't have to protect you. You might get a shiv in the back. Now, I'll grant him the assumption that he's saying metaphorically, a shiv in the back. But you never know with the CIA. When they're talking about a shiv in the back, it might be literal. But this is their attitude. And so just don't... And okay, now these are just a handful of clips that I picked out today. We wouldn't have time in a 5-hour podcast to go through every one of them. My point here is that it is... I think to any honest, informed person watching, undeniable that something's going on here between the deep state, the shadow government, and Donald Trump. Okay? And if you can't see that, I don't think you're looking at this soberly and assessing the objective facts in front of you. Okay? This is all happening. And then if you accept that, right? Like, because I'll even know there are people who are like, you know, be like, oh, the deep state's just kind of a made up term. And you're like, so do you think the CIA exists? Do you think the NSA exists? Do you think the FBI exists? Do you think they do things do you think they're unelected? Do you think they serve from one president to the other? Do you think they do things in secrecy? Okay. Whether you think that or not, they're all facts. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the deep state. I would say
the deep state is unelected officials working against the voting public.
Well, they could be working for or against them, but unelected officials who operate in secrecy, who have extraordinary powers of government. There's this whole I've said this before.
Maybe this is art. I would, if they're not working against the will of the people, then technically speaking, that's government working efficiently.
Maybe
that the elected officials are putting people into power who are also representative of the people.
I'm not even saying whether you think what they're doing is good or bad. It's like this to me.
I think the deep state title only works if they're working nefariously and against the will of the people.
Well, the CIA is a part of the deep state. If they do something good or they do something bad, they're still a part of the deep state. Look, it's like this. It's like there's the way the mafia has a fucking, a dry cleaning business or something like that. Or, whatever. Like, there's be like those, what was it always be like trash companies, right? It was like the big thing that would be a front for the Now, they may actually take out some trash.
Yeah.
They might, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like they're just a fucking, waste management company that's never done anything in waste management. No, they do that. Like, government does actually build roads and libraries and things like that. Like, that's the front. That's the fucking front, and they do that. And then there's the back end where they fucking kill people and do all this fucking crazy shit. And that's kind of what the deep state is in this metaphor in the government. Now, there might be a time where one of those killers gets out and starts taking out some trash. You know what I'm saying? But this is still what they are. And so whether you like what they're doing or don't like what they're doing, there is this organization, there are these many organizations that operate in the shadows with this enormous power of the state. All right? So if you accept that there is such thing as a deep state, I mean, it's just a factual reality. These organizations do exist. The CIA does exist. The NSA does exist. And they often lie about what they're doing. And we've found out many times later that they were lying about what they're doing. And if you looked at all of these clips that we just played, clearly they have an adversarial relationship with Donald Trump. So if you accept that there is a deep state, they are in conflict with Donald Trump, and they have been trying these different measures to bring him down. Now, that I'm not saying that alone doesn't suggest whether or not you think it's right or wrong that they're doing this. Just that is happening. That is what's going on. I would just say to think of things this way. If you are a neocon or a Hillary Clinton supporter, or if you think that American foreign policy over the last 20 years has done an excellent job, if you're one of those people, maybe I could see an argument why you should be on the side of the deep state here. I mean, Donald Trump is threatening to upend this order, so fuck it, let's bring him down, But if you're anybody who say, maybe you're a libertarian, or maybe you're an anti-war leftist, or maybe you're basically just anybody who thinks that these wars haven't been so good, that spending trillions of dollars destroying nations in the Middle East and Northern Africa and getting nothing to show for it except a bunch of dead bodies and a bunch of debt. If you think that's not such a great bargain, if you think that the CIA hasn't been a great organization that's trustworthy, if you believe in any way that there shouldn't be organizations of the government that operate in complete secrecy. Let's just say if you even believe that before we fight a war, the American people should say no about it. Forget even like they get a say in whether we fight the war or not, but let's just say we should know. If you even believe we should know what wars we're fighting right now, anything like that, if you fall into that category at all, ask yourself, how should you feel about this? How should you feel about the CIA leading an impeachment against Donald Trump? Because that's what we've got in front of us right now. That's what's happening. And I know that I know there's libertarians who hate Donald Trump. There's left-wing people who hate Donald Trump who are kind of like, yeah, good, let's see him impeached. But I would just say it like this, right? Do you think that the CIA needs to be reined in? Do you think that wars that are started off lies are generally speaking bad? Because if you do, if you believe either one of those two things, here's what you got to ask yourself. If Donald Trump, who I know you don't like, let's say Donald Trump's the worst guy in the world. Let's say he's a bad president. Let's say he deserves to be impeached, I certainly think he does. Not for this bullshit, but for other legit reasons. But here's what you got to ask yourself. If this is the system, what do you think would ever happen to a president who tried to rein the CIA in? What do you think would ever happen to a president who wanted to not go along with the war party, wanted to not go along with these plans, said, hey, you know what? If we're going to fight a war, we're going to know about that war. If we're lied into a war, people are going to, pay for that. Let's say you're a libertarian. There was a really good libertarian president. Let's say you're an anti-war leftist. There was a really good anti-war leftist president. What do you think the CIA would do to that guy?